Hello, everybody. So today we will discuss chapter number 8, hacking web servers. We have four main agenda items, four main things to discuss in the chapter, starting with the definition of web applications. Then we will discuss the vulnerabilities of web application. We will also discuss methods for avoidance. And last but not the least, we will discuss tools for hacking web servers. And practically, we will demonstrate some. We will use a few tools for hacking web server in our lab 8. I have divided this chapter into two parts, and today we're gonna talk about the first agenda item, definition of web application, where we will discuss the definition. Plus, we will discuss the components of web applications, like different technologies that we can use with web application, how we can design a web application, which languages can be used, and stuff like that. As far as vulnerabilities are concerned, we will discuss 10 most common vulnerabilities identified by OWASP. We will discuss that in detail, and methods of avoidance, we will discuss them in detail. And the last agenda item is I'll just give you an introduction of the tools, but we will use those particular tools in our lab. So starting with the today's agenda, which is definition of web application, these three agenda items will be discussed in part 2 in the next video. So firstly, definition of web application. What is a web application? So web application is just like a typical application software, but that particular software runs on a web server and can be accessed through internet. So these web applications are like Google Map, for example, Hotmail, Gmail. These kind of things are basically called web applications. So web applications are application software that runs on a web server and can be accessed by the user through internet. So through internet, and the examples are, for example, Gmail, Google Maps, for example, Microsoft 365, for example, you can say calendars, the online calendars, etc., etc. These are basically called web applications. And again, these web applications, they give an option to user, like user can give input, and based on user input, it can adjust the content, like depending upon what user has input. For example, if you open Google search, or you just type google.com, you just search for something, it shows you plenty of options, like web search, for example, images, for example, let's say news, etc., etc. If you just hit images, then your input is images. So what will happen, what that web application will do, it will just show you the images. If you just hit news, it will bring it up just the news related to that particular input which user has provided. So now this is the definition of web application. So web application is nothing, just application software runs on internet. Components, how we can design a web application. Typically, or you can say still, HTML, hypertext markup language, it's the foundation of many web applications. So HTML, hypertext markup language, is still foundation of or you can say foundation, or you can say still the building block. So it's still the foundation of many web applications, and it's commonly used for creating static web pages. Now, static web pages are those websites which are basically readable. which gives less opportunity for interaction. Like user cannot give input, user cannot give some input, and I mean whatever is on the website, user can only read the content. Like user cannot post a comment, user cannot upload pictures, nothing like that. No interaction, no cookies creation, nothing like that. Those websites are called static website. HTML is still the best for for creation of static websites. To create dynamic websites, dynamic web applications, or you can say web pages. Dynamic web pages are basically which can take input from users, and then based on user input can change, or you can say can adjust the information, or you can say the web contents, information or web contents. Like whatever user want to see, it will show you that particular stuff. Okay, now to design dynamic web pages, we cannot totally depend on HTML. So we have to embed, or we have to integrate some other technologies. For example, we can use web forms. We can integrate it web forms in the HTML code. Then we can use PHP scripts. We'll talk about it. Then we can use Visual Basic scripts. Then we can use JavaScripts. Okay. Last but not the least, and very important thing is, in order to make it dynamic, in order to make it like more interactive, we have to connect the web application with the database. So database connectors strings. We'll talk about these particular stuff. Okay, these are the different components, or you can say the technologies that we can use in order to convert, in order to make a website, a static website, a dynamic one, so it can interact with the user and all. So let's start with the web forms. What is basically a web forms? So web forms, this is just a syntax or a simple code. We will do that in our lab. So this is just a simple HTML code, but I just put this web application form. You can see this particular tag. By putting this particular tag, what you can do is you can create a form where user can input something on the website. So if you run this particular script, what's going to happen? It will display you enter first name. This is basically what I wrote here with a column and then a box. This particular statement or this tag will create a box where user can input, and what kind of input user can input. That is a text, and the attribute is name. Like name is of course the string, user can put the name and all that, and this is the variable where the data will be stored. Then if you put this particular tag here, so what will happen? It will create a button, submit. So now user can enter something and hit submit, and then it will be received by the web server. Now you can actually store it in the database. You can link a database. You can actually store it on a log file, stuff like that. So in order to take input from user, we use a tag called form. So by using form tag, you can take input from user, and then you can define further actions. This is the first step from static to dynamic. Okay, that's basically from where we use, from where the scripting languages, they actually start. The first scripting language, a very most commonly used scripting language that we can embed within our HTML code, or you can design entire website using PHP. So PHP stands for personal homepage. Nowadays we call it hypertext preprocessor. Hypertext preprocessor, we also call it that. So what is basically a PHP? PHP is basically a scripting language, which is basically an open source scripting language, and we use this particular scripting language to convert a static page into a dynamic page. Okay, so it's basically a scripting language to convert static web page into dynamic. Okay. Secondly, it's an open source. It's an open source server-side scripting language. Open source server-side scripting language, which can be embedded in HTML web page using PHP tag, something like that. I mean, the tag starts, for example, if I just want to put a PHP script in this HTML code, let's say after form, let's say I want to put something, so I can put it a PHP tag here, which start with question mark PHP, and you can put your code in between, and then you can close it with the arrow with this question mark. So we can embed this PHP script within HTML code, HTML body, or you can design entire website using PHP. You can do that as well. With PHP tag, and one more important thing, since it's basically a server-side scripting language, so PHP web pages run on server side, so users cannot view source code. Users cannot view the source code in their web browsers. So like PHP code, PHP script, when it executes, it only shows the output. So users cannot see the source code. And the web page, if it is designed using PHP, the extension is .php. So if you see any web page with extension .php, it means that website or that particular web page is designed using PHP script. The next is the Vbscript, another scripting language, Visual Basic Script. Again, the same purpose. If we want to convert a static web page into a dynamic web page, we can actually use that. You can actually use multiple scripting languages as well, depending upon your requirement, depending upon the application need. So VB stands for Visual Basic Script, which is developed by Microsoft. So Microsoft has developed this scripting language. Again, the main purpose is to convert static into dynamic, like static web pages into dynamic web pages. And you can also say, I mean, the best part is, like, the extension is .vbs, sorry. The best part of this VBS, PHP, JavaScript, all these scripting languages are basically you can design any kind of feature. Like HTML, we have a restriction, like we cannot put the conditional statement, functions, and stuff like that. All we have to do is just put some bunch of tags. But by using Visual Basic Scripting, or for example PHP scripting or Java scripting, we can actually take advantage of the power of these scripting languages, and we can put any kind of security feature. So you can say here, by using these scripting languages, I'm not talking about VBS alone. I'm talking about all the scripting languages like VBS, PHP, JavaScript. One can use and design any security feature, okay, using the power of scripting languages. Okay, another scripting language, another powerful scripting language is called JavaScript, very common nowadays. Extension of a website or web page designed in JavaScript, it is JS.js. That is basically the extension. One of the one of the most common and powerful scripting language. In fact, just like other scripting languages, it offers branches. You can design branches, loops, you can design functions, and conditional statements as well. Conditional statements to design a web application. So it offers you plenty of liberty, in fact, as compared to HTML. Again, the best, one of the best, of course, because most of the people, they have started using JavaScript. JavaScript are mainly used to create cookies. If you want to create cookies, alerts for user, warning messages. Although we can generate alerts, warning messages, cookies, and all that stuff by using any other scripting language, but we mostly JavaScript is used for that particular purpose because of various security features and all. Next is the, and again, JavaScript is something, again, a free open source library. You can put the JavaScript scripts, or you can say JavaScript code on your website. It uses the libraries of JavaScript available on on web. So on web, there are basically libraries of JavaScript. If you write a code or a tag of JavaScript, it automatically gets the information from the libraries available on internet. We'll discuss that because there are a few recent security breaches where people, they hacked the JavaScript libraries. So, I mean, there was nothing wrong on your website, but since you have used that tag, which gets the data or information from the libraries, somebody hacked those libraries. We'll talk about it in detail. Next is the connecting to database. That's a very important thing. We use, web pages or websites, they have to be connected with database for a couple of applications. For example, authentication. Let's say user enter, have created a form to take username and password. After taking username and password, if it is a legitimate user, we need to check it. How we can check that? We can connect this web application with a database, and whatever user has input, we can run a query and see whether it match with the stored values or not, stuff like that. Sometimes user enter something, and user enter on a website something, it can directly store on the websites. So connecting a web page to the databases, it's a very critical and very important step as well. And you can say many of the websites, they are connected with the internet, they are connected with the databases. So most web pages that display companies' information or companies' internal data to users or employees, users, are stored on a database server. Okay, like, so there is a connection between a web server, or you can say a web application, and a database. Sometimes user enter the data on a website, and it directly stores on the database. We also use it for authentication, user authentication, sometime for access control, etc., etc. There are some other security feature as well where we need to connect a database with our web application. In order to connect a web application with a database, there are mainly three technologies, or three main ways to do that. One is called ODBC. It's called the Open Database Connection or Connectivity. Second is OLEDB. It's called Object Linking and Embedding Database. And the last one is called Activex Object. It's basically a programming interface through which we can actually host a Microsoft Word file, Excel sheet on a web server, stuff like that. So kind of collaborative kind of web sheets and all. The first one is ODBC. ODBC stands for Open database connectivity. So this particular technology or this particular method or whatever you want to name it, it was developed by SQL Access Group. And it basically, let's say this is your for example, that's your database. Let's say this is your SQL database or Oracle or Maria, whatever the database is. It offers an interface called Odbc interface, a straight interface which you can connect with the web application. So Odbc interface allows, this is the web application, for example, allows web applications to access data stored on the database management system, which could be SQL Server, which could be Maria or some other. Next is the OLEB. OLEB is faster and more efficient because it offers a set of interfaces, and depending upon what kind of service, what kind of directory structure are there, stuff like that, whatever the service you have used, you can access or connect the database with the web application using that particular interface. So basically OLEB, this technology, it offers plenty of interfaces depending upon directory structure, depending upon what vendor or application or the data source maybe, we actually use that particular interface. It stands for Object Linking and Embedding Database. Okay, and basically this particular technology is developed by Microsoft. So Microsoft has developed this particular technology faster than Odbc, and basically it offers set of interfaces, and again it depends on data source and directory structure. You can actually link it with the database. So it's set of interfaces that enables web application to access data stored on database management system. Last but not the least method is called Activex Object. We use this particular method to actually place the Microsoft Word file, Excel sheets, spreadsheets on a web page. Collaborative kind of thing where different users, they can actually input something and it could be saved online on the web server. So it's basically a programming interface for connecting web application to a database. Okay, and what it does, it allows applications such as you can say word processing or Microsoft Word, spreadsheets, which include Microsoft Excel, to interact with web servers and can be placed on web page. Okay, so kind of collaborative kind of stuff. So this is basically all about the web application. Now in the part 2, we will discuss the vulnerabilities of these web application. Now we have a good understanding of web application, how web application can be designed, stuff like that. What's the connection between web application and database. Now we will discuss what are the different vulnerabilities. Like injecting, how people can inject malicious stuff, why routers and firewall, they cannot avoid web application attacks, stuff like that. So we will, in the next video, we will discuss 10 common vulnerabilities of web applications, and we will also discuss different kind of methodologies to avoid it. For example, how we can avoid cross-site scripting, how we can avoid for example, you can say authorization problems and stuff like that. What are the different tests? What are the different recommendations? So that's it for today. We will discuss that in the next video. Thank you.